What's your normal mail server?
I always feel guilty if I'm not here.
Well,
You my watch says 6:32. Are you ready?
The commitment.
Safari.
Okay, we would like to welcome you to the Planning Commission meeting tonight for October the 11th, 2022. First, all the planning commissioners are here, present and counted for. Does anybody here, this is a time that we welcome public comment. If anybody has come to make a public comment, that is not on the agenda. Anybody? Okay, we're all counted for. Presentations and reports, Mr. Eggett.
Thank you. I think I'll go pretty fast through this and not like I did as in much detail as the work session, but Maverick Convenience Store up on 1500 and Riverdale Road is open for business as our travel center location. And seems to be pretty busy, so that's good. Cheddar Scratch Kitchen is still continuing up out of the ground over by Petco and where the old Best Buy used to be, so we'll continue to watch that anxiously and hope that opens. I think Mr. Woody said sometime in March is what I believe. February or March is when that will open, so that's the at least anticipated. Take 5 Oil Change is coming along pretty quickly as well. Their building is coming right up and out of the ground. And we've resolved some addressing issues with them and Fizz Drinks. Fizz Drinks has started its site between Denny's and Take 5. J-Dogs has completed a 4-way as of earlier today. Home Goods and Sierra are beyond halfway on their site, but they still have quite a ways to go, it sounds like. Super Chicks is pretty close to completing on their tenant improvement for that location. Chick-fil-A is slowly moving along, but it is coming along. Bath and Body Works is near completed, and we anticipate them opening very soon. And Generator Supercenter is taking a little bit of time. So that's pretty much the report on there. The only other thing I noted in the work session is that our building official, Mr. Woody, is retiring, and his last day will be Friday. So with that, that's everything I have, and I defer if there's anything else the Planning Commission would like to know of me. Thanks.
Any questions? Okay, we're ready for our consent items. Are there any comments? Pardon?
No consent items.
There's no consent items.
Oh, there aren't any consent items.
Miss Maragoni.
Excuse me.
Miss Maragoni was out of town while the packet was being
She
put
was,
together.
and we'll get both of them next time, I'm sure. Okay, action items number 1, public hearing to receive and consider comments regarding proposed rezone request for property located at approximately southwest corner of 4400 South and 700
Southeast corner.
Of 4400 South and 700 West, Riverdale, as requested by Forza Development Group. Mr. Eggett.
Thank you. Let me get to it. So Forza Development Group is the petitioner on this one. Mr. Chris Hatch is here representing their interest on the property. This is a request from a C3 regional commercial zoning to multiple family residential R4 zoning, as noted in the packet. The property is surrounded by R5 zoning to the north along 4400 South, RMH1 kind of diagonally to the north across the road, and then Weaver River is nearby. Properties to the south are C3 and Riverdale Road is there. West is R2 and C3. And then east is, I have currently zoned RMH, that's my mistake. That should say is currently zoned R4 zoning. So that's a correction I need to make in my executive summary. But anyway, and then the property is 0.71 acres of land as currently owned by Garf Properties Riverdale LLC. It's been historically a vehicle parking area and otherwise a vacant area. General plan guidance for the project, the rezone site is planned commercial high. Although the request would be for residential zoning, it still would be supportive of a planned commercial high on neighboring property, so that wouldn't mean necessarily of anything that's concerned. And there's even a little bit of commentary about some residential uses in area 7 of the general plan to look at something like this for a rezone for that site. So again, there are comments in the general plan that are supportive of a residential use in this area. With that, you'll see the general plan documentation in your packet following my executive summary. You'll see the map illustrating where the property is and what the requested changes with the surrounding zoning, the actual applicant's application, and explanation of the zone change request, fee being paid for that, and then the public hearing noticing request checklist and supporting documentation. So the public hearing has been completed per state and city requirements. Property was signed and advertised accordingly for a public hearing, and no comments were received prior to this meeting regarding for, against, or otherwise with the rezone request. So that's the long and short of it. And with that, I defer to the Planning Commission to entertain moving forward with the public hearing, and we'll answer any questions thereafter. Thank you.
All right, will we have a motion to open the public hearing?
I'd like to make a motion to open the public hearing.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second.
All in favor?
All in favor? Yeah.
Aye.
Aye. And that's it. The public hearing is now open. Mr. Hatch? Would you,
At this point, I would just open it to the public and let the public comment if there's any members of the public who'd like to comment, and then we can have Mr. Hatch come up as part of the actual
Okay.
item B.
no comments? Okay. Then we need to have Mr. Hatch come forward.
Actually, close the public
Make a
hearing
motion
first.
that we close the public hearing.
Thank you.
Sorry, Rob.
Okay, poll the commission? No, not at this point. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Now move to item B.
Now, consideration to forward a recommendation to the city council regarding the proposed zone request from, is it R4 to C3?
C3 to R4.
C3 to R4. Okay, it's correct on here. All right, for the property on the southeast corner of 4400 South and 700 West, as requested by the Forza Development Group. Would you like to come forward and state your city of residence?
Wonderful. Hi, my name is Chris Hatch, and I'm from Salt Lake City.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Questions? No questions?
These are my favorite kind of meetings.
That's what it might be. Okay, then there would be, a motion would be in order.
I'd like to make a motion, we forward a favorable recommendation to the city council regarding proposed rezone request from regional commercial C3 zoning to multiple family residential R4 zoning for the property located at approximately southeast corner of 4400 South, 700 West Riverdale, as requested by Forza Development Group.
Do we have a second?
Second?
And now we can poll the commission. Please.
Commissioner Wingfield?
Aye.
Commissioner Herman?
Aye.
Commissioner Jones?
Aye.
Commissioner Knight?
Aye.
Commissioner Eskelsen?
Aye.
Commissioner Spires?
Aye.
Commissioner Anderson?
Aye.
And that's unanimous. And we can go on to action item 2, a public hearing to receive and consider our comments regarding the proposed rezone request for property located at approximately 4450 South 700 West in Riverdale, as requested by the Forza Development Group. Mr. Agate.
Thank you. So this is a lot like the last item. Obviously, the property is a different location. The biggest change here being that the property is owned by the Carey family properties, and currently the property is operated as a motor vehicle and ATV retail store site. Other than that, the zoning features are all similar. The property is 0.87 acres of land, and all the supporting documentation is the same as the last item, including the general plan documentation where it said it's planned commercial high. It's part of Area 7, and Area 7 does discuss, again, some kind of a potential housing project being considered in this area of the city. All the supporting documentation is in the packet reflecting all that. Application is found therein. Application has been completed correctly in accordance with the requirements. Fees been paid. The public hearing notice checklist is in there showing that all public hearing requirements have been met by the city, and no comments were received prior, during, or up to this point with the advertisement for this public hearing this evening. So absent any other questions with that, I think it's pretty straightforward. The same kind of discussion. I would defer to the Planning Commission to move forward to the Planning Commission, and we can discuss thereafter. Thank you.
Okay, open the,
I'd like to make a motion, we open the public hearing.
Second it.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And that's unanimous. So,
Let me close it.
are there any comments? Okay, then we can close the public hearing.
I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second?
All in favor? Please plan, aye, yeah, please.
Aye.
Yes. Okay. Now, we can ask Mr. Hatch. Do you have?
Go ahead and maybe read just the title of B, even if you want to do it short.
Okay, consideration to forward a recommendation to City Council regarding the proposed rezone request from Regional Community Commercial C3 zoning to multiple family residential R4 zoning for property located at approximately 4450 South 700 West Riverdale, Utah, as requested by Forza Development Group. And I don't anticipate, does anybody have any questions?
I have one question.
Yes.
So these two pieces of property that you're representing,
Yes.
they're being bought by the family that owns the trailer court, is it correct?
Yeah. So
It's not going to be a separate grouping.
it's a good question. So I'm not trying to be labored in my response. I'm just trying to give you the correct response. So Forza Development has put a partnership together with the ownership of the trailer park and the Carries piece. And then on the Garf piece, we've entered into an exchange agreement with Garf where we're basically going to end up swapping them 1 square foot of land for 1 square foot of land to give them a continuous lot on the east side of the property because they flank right now on the east side of the trailer park. So there are some things that we need to do to that property to make it suitable for them to continue to run it, to store new and used car inventory securely, and to have their employees on there. And so we've been working with staff to come up with kind of a plan there. And then the development agreement basically will be Forza Development and probably a partner that will then come in and go vertical to help ultimately utilize the new zoning. So yeah, all one contiguous unit.
I just didn't want those two units to be separate from the.
Yep.
Now I'm all.
So everything's going to be R4. It would be all consolidated R4 with the exception of you guys are going to have a spot for them to still park.
Yes, and I'm not sure what that zoning is.
Yeah, without getting into too much detail and being too tangential, the long and short of how that would work is whatever Garf would do in order for it to better suit their needs would have to go through its own rezone process on whatever is ultimately subdivided or redrawn as their property ownership in the future and recorded. They would need to then come in and get that probably rezoned to C3 to better match what they're doing on their site. And then we would go through some kind of a site plan process with them to improve their site because they will probably have some improvements they need to do, form of fencing, landscaping, and parking improvements to their area.
So myself or one of my colleagues at Forza Development will be presenting from here on out, for the project.
So is the piece of property you swapped with, is that still a R3 or what's that?
So the current Garf properties that are in the back that they retained, right? Those are still RMH1 zoned properties. That's why, and then whatever they swap, some of that will be the R4 that comes from the mobile home park property that's been rezoned, right?
Okay.
So once that new line is drawn out and delineated on a subdivision plat, we'll have a better identification of what that lot is, and better identify it to be that whole lot will be now rezoned to C3 once we know what it is. That's the best way I can explain it.
Thank you.
Mr. Eggett, I have one question, and probably should have brought this up in the work session, but where this has been commercial and we're now placing residential units on that, at what point do we measure and see if that property has any health? I mean, because where it's been, motors, engines, those kinds of things, does that come with the site plan approval or preliminary?
It's a fair question. It's an interesting question. There's some legitimacy to the question. I will say that. Our fire marshal / code enforcement officer historically has had some environmental concerns looked at on the Carry Cycle property. Those concerns, to my understanding, have been resolved.
Okay.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that as part of this process, the development group that will develop that property we'll still need to probably do some soil sampling and geotechs, and there may be some things that come out of that in the form of contaminants. And if there were contaminants, clearly I'm sure they would remediate that responsibly in the event that it were
But that's
identified.
measured as part of the site plan?
Site planning process is when it would probably better identify that, yeah.
And are you aware that there may be those concerns moving forward?
So we actually just received our environmental report on the Carey's property either today or yesterday. And the phase one actually came back with no further recommendations. That's not uncommon on a former automotive facility, in this case, an existing automotive facility, that it's not uncommon. But what is common is often when you're digging footings, you find, a lot of it's hydrocarbons, it's oil, oil spills. And so if we find those, the state has a remediation process. We're building housing, so it's to the highest standard of cleanup that's basically required at that point. And I mean, it's certainly something that we're experienced with and have done, and believe we treat that as responsible as we can and according to state standard.
So you've already done all the soil testing already and perk tests, like all that?
So the phase one didn't identify any percethylene anywhere close to the site, and it did identify some hydrocarbons, some gas and oil, but it had been taken care of. And so It didn't recommend a phase two or a limited site investigation, which would be boring samples, etc.
Okay.
So
Because the building's still there, right?
it's still an operating business, yeah.
So we can't really finish checking the whole property until that's all gone, right?
Yeah, well, I'll let Mr. Hatch comment on it, and then
So it's pretty normal on even an existing automotive site. Let's just take, for example, the Sinclair gas station that's next door. Even sometimes when we're looking to purchase an existing operating gas station with tanks in the ground still running, it isn't abnormal to have a phase one come back with no further recommendations. Phase one is all computer related. It's research related, right? Primarily looking at spills that have happened historically, and the spills that have happened, have they been addressed appropriately according to the standards and procedures? And so it's not uncommon to see a phase one have no recommendations for a phase two or further action, even though it's an existing automotive use, right? Just because it's an automotive use does not mean that it's a contaminated site. However, when you go to dig in the ground, that's almost inevitably where you find any contamination, right? Because by the time you get done, I can tell you by the time we're done here, we'll have dug up everything. So it won't look the same, and it will be quite different. And, in the process of moving all that dirt around, you end up finding the contamination if it's there typically. So
just a quick anecdote, even over where Krispy Kreme went in and that Best Burger site and some of that area, when they were digging, they found old homes that were just foundations that were basically buried over, and they even found like charred beams and stuff. So there even had been fires. I mean, you'll find the weirdest. What I guess I'm trying to qualify with what he's saying is, you'll dig in a site thinking that there's nothing there, and you'll find out real quick that there's something in the ground you didn't anticipate that's going to add additional cost because you have to remove it. You're not going to leave it there, right? So in this case, there was extra expense to remove some foundations they didn't even know were down that were just buried over. So you will find things.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thanks.
Good questions. Okay, with that, a motion would be in order.
I'll make the motion that we can forward a favorable recommendation to the city council regarding proposed rezone request from regional commercial C3 zoning to multiple family residential R4 zoning for property located approximately 4450 South, 700 West, Riverdale, Utah 84405. It's requested by Forza Development Group.
I'll second it.
Poll the commission, please.
Commissioner Eskelson?
Aye.
Commissioner Wingfield?
Aye.
Commissioner Jones?
Aye.
Commissioner Spires?
Aye.
Commissioner Herman?
Aye.
Commissioner Knight?
Aye.
Commissioner Anderson?
Aye.
Thank you. With that, we can go on to any questions the planning commission has or would like to make tonight at the end of any questions?
I just
Okay.
have one thing.
Yes, sir.
I just want to say thank you to all of you for all your time and your volunteering. I know I've seen some challenges and stressors that you've had throughout the year, and I appreciate your dedication and diligence to coming back time and again to what sometimes feels like not a lot of recognition or even a little bit thankless, but I do appreciate it. And clearly I can't do my job and make the city great without you helping me to make the city great. So thank you for your 7 of you for your dedication and time and helping to make sure that things are done as best we can make them for the city. I do appreciate that very much.
And we appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. We can't do it without you.
Thank you very much. Okay, with that,
I'd like to make a motion, we adjourn.
Second?
all in favor?
Aye.
Fast